Thanks for joining us for this episode of Got Your Six, Lads Advice Encounters with me, Gav Topley, and friends. Today I'm joined by Dr. David Williams. Dr. Williams is a Fellow and Director of Studies in Veterinary Medicine at St John's College, Cambridge University, an Associate Lecturer in Veterinary Ophthalmology at the Department of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Cambridge, and an Honorary Senior Lecturer in Animal Welfare and Ethics at the Royal Veterinary College, London. Dr. Williams, welcome to the podcast and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin. Well done for all those ridiculous titles. It's crazy, isn't it? And that's 35 years, I suppose, of veterinary medicine that's gradually got me all that stuff. And I suppose it's all about what I wanted to do when I was 6, would you believe? So at 6, I took my little guinea pig, Jeanpierre, don't ask me why I called him that, to a vet practice in Cambridge. And the guy, Jeanpierre, had a nasty little rash on his back. And this guy took a little skin scraping, smeared it under a microscope and showed me these little mites that were crawling around, and he gave me a little white powder to rub on the back of my guinea pig every day for a week, and it worked. It was amazing. Later on, of course, we found the white powder, which was an organophosphate, was toxic to guinea pigs and small children. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The thing is, I thought, wow, this is what I want to do in life. I want to do something that cures animals, that's got some science behind it, and that helps people as well. And that's basically what I've been doing all the time since then. And I suppose that's one thing for everybody. You're not all going to be vets, are you? But if you've got right from the start an aim to go for, all the years that I was doing at school, doing all different exams, there was all that aim of being a vet. And then when I was a vet, the aim, I knew when I was a vet that actually eyes was the thing I wanted to do. So I ended up aiming to be a veterinary ophthalmologist. And once I had done that, well, I knew that teaching was really important to me. So I went and taught. So all the time, every year, I thought, what have I got to aim for from then on? I think that's really important. If you can think, what have you got to aim for as you're going on, and direct your life in that way. That sounds really awful, doesn't it? But it's just something that comes from the heart of me, is if you can have an aim and go for it, then that's fine. So years and years later, you'll find me on the BBC, crazily having done an eye operation in a tiger. That was a crazy thing. We did it in February. This zoo near to Cambridge rang me up and said, "Oh, we've got a problem with one of our tigers. She's pranged her eye in something in the cage. She's got a really damaged eye. Can you come?" Well, I was 20 minutes and I was there, and we operated on this tiger. It was a fairly simple operation to do. The same thing we do on a normal cat or dog, but a dancer easier because the tiger's eye was so much bigger. And so I said, I've got a little Instagram following, and I said, well, about 3,000 students, and I said, "Oh, can I put this on the Instagram?" They said, "Oh, we'd like to get some publicity for it." So we rang the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail came along, they took some pictures, they did an interview with me, and the next day, the Duke of Edinburgh went to the hospital and the tiger was completely forgotten. Hopeless. So it went on for months and months after that, with me saying, "Oh, can I put it on the Instagram?" And then saying, "Oh, no, we'd like to get some publicity." So eventually they rang the BBC. It was the day before lockdown was going to be eased for the very first time. And the BBC clearly wanted a fun story, something positive. So they interviewed me, and they talked about this tiger that, well, I had saved its vision in a way that nobody else seemed to have done before in a tiger. And that was, of course, just the thing that the BBC wanted. So suddenly it went onto their website. Do you know, the first people who contacted me via WhatsApp said, "Excuse me," they were my veterinary friends in Sri Lanka. They said, "We do tigers every day, and the BBC have never asked us for an interview." Well, so what I'd also say in life is, it's just luck. Do you know, life is like a relay race, and somebody's going to hand you a baton, and the thing to do is grab the baton and run as fast as you can. But what happens if you drop the baton? Well, you don't stand there going, "Oh shit, probably should I say that on?"
That's fine.
What am I going to do? No, of course you pick up the baton, you run faster than you would have done otherwise. So what I'd say is, like this tiger, it was just an opportunity, and I took the opportunity and ran with it, and that seemed to work. And you know, all my life, actually, if I look back, it's all been opportunities. Some of them I've completely ballsed up, and other ones I've really taken and run with, which has got me where I want to be now.
So it's interesting you speak about Jeanpierre and the organophosphates and the tiger, and you might think that the tiger would be the more dangerous interaction of the two. I presume that you and Jeanpierre were unscathed.
We were, of course, yeah. Because, of course, dear Mr. Jordan knew that this might be a toxic compound, but it was more toxic to the mites on Jeanpierre than it was to either Jeanpierre or me. But, of course, the trouble is, it's all too often a problem these days that the law says, oh, we must be completely careful with regard to public safety. So it puts in lots of rules about things that actually don't really matter. Dare I say that? They don't really matter. It's just that to make sure on a population level that nobody dies of organophosphate poisoning, they say that nobody should touch it at all. These days, of course, if you had, well, we don't have similar compounds, but if you had a compound something like that, you'd be told, oh, wear gloves and wash your hands afterwards, things like that. But in those days, nothing was like that. Interestingly, I've just been to a practice. I work at the vet school, but I go around to about 30 different veterinary practices, and they're an amazing variety from really upmarket, up-to-date practices that are doing everything as exactly the law tells you to, and old-fashioned, we'd say old school practices that still, for instance, inject anaesthetic into a cat just with a needle into a vein. Oh, say the other practices, you can't do that. You have to have a catheter to put in place to start with. Well, you can do it just off the needle, but you can't charge as much doing it off the needle as you can if you put a catheter in. Oh, maybe beforehand we should take a blood sample to make sure that all the ends, all the blood results are right, so that your rabbit or your cat or your dog is appropriate to have this surgery. But this practice was saying, no, if it needs the surgery, who cares what its liver enzymes are doing? And that's a measure of how well your liver works in your blood. Well, actually, given that Gavin and I have got a good amount of Glenlivet tonight, I don't think our livers will end up being very well in the end of the day. But again, the trouble is these days that people are going, oh gosh, from a health and safety perspective, you mustn't do this or that. You've got a life. You've only got one life to live, so live it. I'll just take another sip of Glenlivet if you don't mind.
Cheers, and very kind of you to provide the beverages.
No worries at all. Anyway, so, and I think the other thing that we've just shown is a sense of humour and a bit of a laugh. The number of people who go round in life just with a glum face. I'm looking at Gav now. I've never seen Gav without a bit of a smile on his face. So, and I think, yeah, if every day you can think of something that's fun in the day, go at the end of the day, look back on the day and don't look back going, oh God, that was an awful day. No, there's been something that's fun during the day. Go on that and keep going through entertaining things that keep you going through life. So for instance, today I saw a horse. And a horse that had a cataract, a little opacity in its lens. And actually, it was fine. But this horse was barging us around all over the place. And I was managing to hold on. And then what you see on the photo, a bow tie and a waistcoat and a jacket is what I always wear. And the owner said, is this how you normally dress for going to see horses? I said, well, this is how I normally dress. The only time I don't wear a bow tie is in the shower, because it's a plastic bow tie. It's not a bow in the shower, in bed, and in the operating theatre. Those are the only 3 times I don't wear a bow tie. And again, it's something. Well, I tell you what. My mum always wanted me to be in a t-shirt and jeans because she wanted me to be like everybody else. And the opposite, I wanted the opposite. I wanted to be different from everybody else. So I always had my tie done right up to the top, even in the summer when in school so you didn't need to wear a tie anymore. So my first day of my gap year, working in a research laboratory in London, I went to Jermyn Street and I bought a bow tie. and I've always worn bow ties ever since then. It's great because everybody knows, oh, it's David, it's the bow tie. So, and again, it's a bit of fun, I think. So tonight's bow tie is, Gav said, you should see his tie. He's got a great tie on, and I thought I'll put a bright bow tie on every day. Of course, I have a new bow tie. You wouldn't want someone to say, oh, I thought I saw you in that bow tie a month ago. So I've got about 250 bow ties, and they go in a rotation around. So this one was about 3 or 4 down the line, but I brought it forward to put it on today just to show you that there's a bright bow tie. But is your life bright? Do you have something that you can wear or something you can do in life that makes your life bright? I think that's so important to be able to do that. So there you go. That's another little hint from David about how to keep your life bright.
So at 6, you decided you wanted to be a vet.
Yeah.
At what age did you start the fascination with bow ties?
So that was 18. So as I say, my first day of my gap year. So the trouble is, I've had it really lucky. I've always been able to be a vet. So I was pretty clever at school, I suppose. And I although, well, I'll tell you about school in a moment or two, but I was always pretty clever at school, so I could get the A level, the O levels. O levels, it's a bit of a time ago. The GCSE equivalents and the A levels to be a vet, and then to get through vet school. Although I never was particularly good at vet school, I did it just enough. I think that's another thing. Don't think you always have to be the best. Just do enough to get through. So I did that. So I suppose I've always been lucky in that. And the people I think I've got more of a heart for are people. Imagine you want to be a vet since the age of 6, but actually you weren't as good at your sciences, say, and so you couldn't be a vet. You couldn't get A levels, the ridiculous A star and 2 A's that we're asking for at A level. So what do? Well, you could just crump and say, oh, I can't do it, or just carry on. So I remember Linda, an amazing vet nurse. She wanted to be a vet, but she didn't have the A levels. She hadn't actually done anything much at school. So she was a vet nurse. And then when I was working with her, she went back to night school, and she didn't get the most brilliant A levels, but we all wrote in support of her. And eventually she got a place at the Royal Veterinary College. And now, she's a professor in the university in Sydney. So it just shows, just because it doesn't work, I was lucky. For me, it worked out first time. But actually, if it doesn't work out first time and you want to do something, just carry on and do it, or find something else that really is your passion that you can do. So what I love, Gav here, has he told you about himself? So Gav was in the army, okay? He was in the veterinary corps in the army, and then he realised that actually he wanted to do more. So he's now doing a doctorate in education. I'm doing a doctorate in education. This is how we got together in the first place. So he's doing a doctorate in education in Cambridge. I mean, I bet when you started, Gav, you'd never have thought you'd have ended up here, did you?
No.
But what he's done, he's grabbed that baton and he's run with it, and I think that's so important. So he's a great example of someone who might not have done exactly as brilliantly at school as he might have hoped. I don't know, but he's just nodding now. And I just managed to wing it, sort of thing, really. But whatever your situation, if you've got, do you remember I started off saying that aim? If you've got that aim, then just carry on. Don't go, if you fall at the first hurdle, if you're in a hurdles race and you knocked over the first hurdle and just stopped, then that'd be hopeless. But if you just carry on and jump the next ones, then that's the way to go. So I think that's, well, I was just saying that at the beginning, wasn't it? But my poor wife has this all the time. I just keep on saying the same thing again and again and again and again. But anyway, but it's okay, because you can stop this in a minute or two, can't you? And hopefully you've just got the impression that life is fun, enjoy it and do your best. And that's, what more can you ask for than doing your best?
So there's a few points that I'd like to pick up from on the things that you've raised. So first of all is self-perception, and a huge thing in the research is people like me. Did you know anyone yourself that was a vet when you were growing up, and is that what inspired you, or were you the first in your sort of friends and family to go into that line?
No, Not at all. As I say, Mr. Jordan in Clarendon Street in Cambridge was the first vet I'd ever come across. I thought, wow, that's what I want to do. So my dad was a doctor, although actually my mum and dad weren't married. That's another story. My mum and dad weren't married, so I didn't really know my dad properly for the first 11 years of my life. But anyway, but he was a doctor. So at that point, later on, when I knew that he was my dad, aged 11, I'll tell you that story another time, maybe. But or maybe not. Who knows? So at that point, I could have thought, oh, actually, maybe I should. He was a senior consultant in our local hospital, and I could have thought, oh, maybe medicine. But I always knew there was something deep in my heart from at age of 6 that I knew that was animals was what I wanted to deal with. There's a picture of me actually aged 2, I think, at the local fair in Cambridge on Midsummer Common, sitting on a stuffed lion. So clearly, I was somehow interested. Even at that age, I was interested in animals. So that just kept me going through. Really, was that the I can't even remember what your question was, Gav. So I can't remember whether I've answered it or not.
That's all right. No, but you give me some more. So I was talking about sort of role models.
Role models. Yeah. So let me tell you. So I'm looking now over in my room at a set of 9 leather-bound volumes of Wortley Axe's The Horse in Disease and Health from 1904. Okay, 1905. And my first junior school teacher, Miss Lloyd, her uncle had just died. He was a vet and he had left her all his books. And at the age of 7, she gave me these books. They're amazing. They have, I mean, it's worth just Googling Wortley Axe, Disease of the Horse in Disease and Health, and you can see some of the amazing pictures that are in those books. And I just, she sat me at the back of her class, and I just went through those books and thought, wow, this is amazing. So that was one. And then my mum, her friend was the wife of the head of veterinary anatomy. And again, age 7, he took me in and he showed me, and it's still there. If any of you want to come up to Cambridge, I'll show you the anatomy department. It's got a whole load of huge skeletons of horses and cows and things like that. And also, he had a Victorian rolled top desk in his office, and he rolled the wooden top back and pulled out one of the drawers, and in there was a little mouse and her pups. And he said, oh, this one didn't do very well in the laboratory. I didn't ask why it was in the laboratory. So I brought it down here to care for. And again, I thought that's lovely. The science of these huge skeletons, and then the caring for this individual animal. I think that's the thing that got me as well. Just like Mr. Jordan with the mites under the microscope and the care for me and my guinea pig. Similarly, that link that I still have really between science and care. And so that's what's kept me going from that perspective. Really. So as far as role models are concerned, we could hardly say that Miss Lloyd, who was pretty ancient, I don't know when she died, but she must have died a long time ago, because she was pretty ancient when she was my first junior school teacher. There and Mr. Silver. Now, interestingly, he's now Professor Silver, and I've just talked to someone yesterday who met him in a village not 10 miles away from here. So I'm going to go and find Ian Silver again and thank him for what he did for me however many years ago, 50 whatever years ago that is. So those in a way were my role models, not that they were people that I saw exactly doing what I was wanting to do, but that sort of thing. So that's the answer for a role model wise.
And so would you say that, did you always have that self-belief that you wanted to be a vet, so you'd be a vet, or were there circumstances that led to you getting that confidence?
Isn't it difficult to know how you have that self-belief? So let me go back to my dad. So my mum and dad weren't married. My mum lived in a tiny house down a tiny street in Cambridge, because when she knew she was pregnant with me, she was single, and she bought this house for 800 quid, and because it was going to be knocked down to make way for a big shopping complex that never actually. Anyway, that's another story. So this man would always come around for an hour on a Sunday morning. And I was a very clumsy kid, so everything was always broken. I always had a broken toy. And so I'd say, mend it. And so he became Mendy. And Mendy would come and give me an hour of his time every Sunday morning. And apart from that, my mum and I didn't really get on. I was always a naughty kid. And but this man came round, and actually when I was 11, one Sunday lunchtime, I said to my mum, I had always said to her, where's my dad? And she always said, away. And I presume that must mean in another country, because he would have come and seen me, wouldn't he, if he was in this country? But actually, of course, I never said, where's my dad, when Mendy was there. When I was about 10, I came across my mum and dad, as we'd say in those days, canoodling on the couch. Like just having a snog, basically. I don't know whether that's the word you still use. I think it probably is. So, and I said, what would my dad say if he were? Thankfully, my Mendy then didn't laugh. But so when I was 11, I said to my mum one Sunday lunchtime, you must have a picture of my dad. And the next Sunday, she produced this picture of a very young Mendy. I said, that just looks like a young Mendy. And the next Sunday I said, I reckon Mendy's my dad. She said, that took you a long time to work out. But then it was a nightmare. He was a senior consultant in Addenbrooke's Hospital here in Cambridge with a wife and children of his own. So the very fact that I might go to school the next Monday morning and tell people that this guy who was a senior doctor was my dad must have been so it must have been interesting. I'd like to be the fly on the wall when he went and told his wife that, you remember Phyllis Williams, who used to do babysitting for us? Well, she probably did Melbourne babysitting anyway. But that was fine with me. There were lots of kids at the time, I'm sure, who hadn't actually had an hour of their dad's 100% time and attention. So to my mind, that was fine. And I know lots of people would be really scarred. I've met people who are scarred by that sort of story, but I've always had and I think that's ironically, I am my dad. He was always such a positive person, and my mum was a really negative person, and I spent 99.9% of my time with my mum and 0.1% of my time with my dad, and yet I am exactly. So I don't know what that tells you about genetics and character, but basically I look at pictures of him now always smiling, and I'm always smiling. I mean, he must have been a nightmare to live with, as I'm a nightmare to live with, because I always see the positive things side of things. So but I think, again, isn't that a good thing if you can see a positive side? So lots of people have said, oh God, isn't it awful, I've never really properly met with my dad like other people have. But I didn't know what other people's relationships are, and they might have had horrendous relationships. Maybe the interesting thing is my dad never disciplined me. Well, of course not. He was there with me for a Saturday morning for an hour. He wasn't going to tell me off. So in that way, I had a bit of an unusual relationship with him. And people say, oh, how is my relationship with my kids? And I tell them, I've told my kids off in the past. But you know, when my kids were, I've got 3 boys, and when they were 8, 6 and 4, they came to me and they said, Dad, what do you want us to be when we grow up? And just leave a little space there for you to say, what if you had someone say, what do you want me to be when I grow up? What do you think you'd say? Well, I said, that's very easy. Happy. They went, no, Dad, what do you want us to be when we grow up? I said, well, I can't tell you that now. One of them's an IT consultant and computer coder. One of them's doing a master's in zoology, and one of them plays the oboe in a conservatoire. So they're completely different. But what I said to them is, be happy. And all of them are happy. And I think, again, if you might have a life where you think, I can't be, like, how can I be happy in this situation? But, you know, there's always some opportunity to be happy. And actually, happiness isn't something that happens to you. I think it's something that you make for yourself, really. And I think, again, I didn't realize we were going to get into deep philosophy, but and our philosopher here, who I meet up with fairly often, Alexander Bird, he may say that's completely wrong. But I don't know. I just feel that happiness is something that you can make for yourself. And if happiness had to be something that was made for you, we'd all be very sad, wouldn't we? But actually, especially in this day and age, I think if you can find something that keeps you going, I mean, for me, I'm really, really, really lucky that my work is the thing that I love. Well, don't tell my wife and kids that. So of course, I love them as well. But actually, if all the time that you're working, you can really be happy. Now, that's not to say there aren't horrendous things. There's one ghastly guy at the vet school, and the only guy I've had a stand-up row with in the corridor.
We won't name him.
And we won't name him. But if you're a vet at Cambridge, you know exactly who I'm talking about, don't you? So it was a nightmare when I had that. And then there'll be other situations like that. Everything isn't rosy sort of thing. But actually, if you can have a positive outlook, then again, it's difficult for me, isn't it? Because I do feel everything has been positive. I mean, I can look back. So for instance, I was working in a research hospital, and I had failed to get a £500,000 research grant from the Wellcome Trust. I got down to the last 3, and then some bloody medic got it instead of me. And then I failed my professional exams. And the next day, the new head of this hospital came to me and said, "Oh, I'm very sorry, David, we're going to have to say goodbye." And I mean, I can remember then thinking, what a complete nightmare. Now, it has to be said that last year, that hospital ran out of funds and collapsed completely. If I hadn't been chucked out of there, boy, I'd have still been there. So actually, it was wonderful that happened. It didn't seem wonderful at the time, but actually, I remember that evening, I went to there was a great group called Tensing that had come over from Norway or something like that to our church, and I went to a concert by them and thought, oh well, yeah, okay, so I've been made redundant, but something will happen. And the next day, somebody rang me up and said, "Oh, I gather you've been made redundant. Do you want to come and work with our veterinary practice?" So it was a awful practice, but it was something to do. So again, I think there's always something. You can think the worst of things or think the best of things, and honestly, if you can, think the best of them.
So would you say everything happens for a reason?
Oh, that'd be lovely. It's in retrospect, it seems that way, but that's now. So I have to tell you now, I'm a Christian, and I do feel there's a God that controls things. But if there's a God that controls things, why on earth did that earthquake, that tsunami happen in Tonga, and all those things? So I do. That is so difficult. So I do believe there's a God that controls things, but also he only controls things if you'll control them yourself. So does everything happen for a reason? Well, only if you make it happen for the right reason. Everything happens for a reason, but the reason could be a horrendously wrong reason, or if you can make it the right reason. So another key point is whenever you're riding a bicycle, wear a helmet. You're going, what on earth? I mean, my students will tell you I go off on tangents, but here's an important tangent. So I was living in Clapham in South London and working and doing a PhD in Camden in North London, and I was really fat, and I needed to lose weight, and the best way of losing weight was to cycle across London, and I did that every day, and it worked. I lost an amazing amount of weight, not in the way I expected to, because actually I was riding the one day I didn't wear my helmet. I was riding across Clapham Common, slightly misjudged the fact that the car that was driving along the one little lane, Windmill Lane, across Clapham Common, was going at 48 miles an hour rather than 30. I didn't realise that. And he knocked me off my bike. I bullseyed the windscreen, and someone was looking down. Now you're going to say, oh, he's going to say God's looking down. Well, I think he was, but actually someone was looking down from his bedroom window, and phoned the 999 as the accident happened. And it was the middle of Russia, so the helicopter landed within 6 minutes. This is in 1991, so it's the first year of the helicopter emergency service, HEMS, in London, and took me to the Royal London Hospital, and that's why I'm here today. So, and you might say everything happens, oh gosh, wasn't it amazing that the helicopter landed? But on the other hand, if there was a God, he could have said, David, just don't cross the road now because this car is coming too fast. But but again, and you might say, well, that was awful. So we were just a month away from being married. Complete disaster in a way. But actually, now I look back on it, it's sort of okay. I still have a bit of a double vision when I look down because of my head injury, but whatever. That maybe just tells me how lucky I am still to be alive. So you can go through life thinking, oh, I could think that was a complete nightmare, and actually that changed my life. I could have been carrying on doing a really important PhD in London that then took me on to much higher things. But actually, what is the point in having that sort of a view of life? Or you could say, I was so lucky that the helicopter was there and it was able to take me. I'm actually lucky that I didn't tell you, I bullseyed the windscreen, but then I bounced off onto some iron railings. So as though I cracked my skull open and gave myself a severe head injury, I ruptured a major artery in my abdomen by bouncing onto the iron railings, and so bled out all my blood volume into my abdomen, which meant there wasn't enough blood to get into my brain to do serious damage, which is why I'm still here. So, I mean, that's crazy, isn't it? Can that be right? And could you say, I mean, if you've got a faith, you can say, oh gosh, well, God had that in mind, but that's a pretty strange God if that is in his plan, isn't it? But again, God says, if you're in my plan, then you can make it work, sort of thing, which is how it sort of happened. So the students will always tell you, and my kids know, if you've got half an hour to sit down, ask Dad a question, but otherwise leave it for later. So Gav, have you got another question?
As an army medic, what you're describing is quite a horrific situation. And I suppose what we're talking about here is narratives and stories we tell ourselves, and that's what both individual philosophy and society is based upon. And I've seen it written down lots of times that, as human beings, we're the only animals that can torture ourselves with what has happened and what might happen, rather than being quite present, and worrying about what's going on now.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that if you're a dog, today is the day. And actually, you don't think, maybe I could have had that bone yesterday. Or maybe actually, that's not quite true, because you do have like separation anxiety in dogs that are waiting for their owners. So that's not necessarily true, but basically a dog lives in today. And maybe we should live in today. Well, is that right? So I want to live looking forward to, what did I say at the beginning? I said about an aim. So that's what I've just told you is rubbish. So you've got to have an aim for the future, but actually not one that's going to cripple you. And then things that have happened in the past could cripple you or could move you forward. So I think, in a way, living like a dog. What? Living like a dog in the moment is really quite useful, and not being paralyzed by either things that you wish hadn't happened in the past or things that might happen but might not happen in the future. If you can live in today, then that's great.
I guess that's a balance, because you can have objectives and aims and work towards them and still, not be overly concerned by things that are outside of your control. And I spoke to a number of people, Stephen Fry and Darren Brown, on this topic. Similarly, both have written about mental illness and being happy. In fact, I think Darren Brown's book is called Happy, and what he gave me was a version of the Serenity Prayer, which, as I'm sure you know, the Serenity Prayer is grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
That sounds brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not. Yeah, absolutely. I just say live life and enjoy life is the key thing. And actually, the only thing about what we've been talking about is me, isn't it? So actually, live life, enjoy life, and help others to enjoy life. And actually, if you can have a life that's actually looking out, I think one of the troubles is lots of people looking in, and if you look in, you can always find things that actually aren't as you want them to be. But actually, if you look out and are looking to help people to be the people they could be, and then that can help you to be the person you could be. Ooh. So I've only just thought of that, but that sounds like deep and meaningful, doesn't it?
But I think you're right, and I think that a lot of the research supports what you're saying in terms of we're living in an increasingly individualistic society, and we can see the knock-on of that in terms of increased rates of anxiety and depression. There's a longitudinal study at Harvard, which is the longest of its kind, that looks at human connections and the quality of interaction between people that they value that connection with, and there's a correlation between, those that don't have it are likely to have Alzheimer's disease onset earlier, they're more likely to have physical and emotional and mental illnesses, and they ultimately die sooner. And then, of course, Johan Hari, in his TED Talk, speaks about addiction, and go up and look up the TED Talk, won't talk about it too much now, but an experiment called Rat Park, and ultimately what he says is the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, the opposite of addiction is connection and quality of connection. So I think, you've hit the nail on the head there in terms of what's important. If you're out there and interacting with others in a way that has high quality, then it's probably much more difficult to have a negative outlook.
It's one of the troubles I have with social media is if you come across the Dunbar number. Do you know the Dunbar number? The Dunbar number. Dunbar was a guy who worked on different primate species, different monkey species, and he found that the size of your brain related to the number of individuals in your group, your tribe, basically. And for us, I can't remember what the Dunbar number is, 25, 30, something like that. 30 people you can have a meaningful interaction with. So the last time, my birthday, 430 people on Facebook said, happy birthday. Whoa, what amazing to have. I mean, I've to have that number of friends, and yet they're friends I sort of vaguely know, but actually the key thing is actually think about the Dunbar number. Think of actually having a smaller number of really good friends. So I'm really pleased. I can't remember how we first met, Gav, but I have to say, I don't really know. We know each other a bit because we've linked up together. Well, I don't really know you as well as I could do, but it's really good to have a few people that you can link up with. And they may be complete. We couldn't imagine if you put the two of us together, you in your army uniform and me in my bow tie, so you wouldn't think that there was any connection between us at all. Although, of course, we're both at St. John's, which means we're ultimately 100% connected. But just to have a few people that you can really link up with and have this sort of conversation with. And the other thing is, very rarely do I have this sort of conversation with people. And I wonder, have you found somebody you can have this sort of conversation with? It's pretty rare, really, without having to have a microphone in front of you. So it's really good to do this, Gavin. It's great too. And I wonder if you guys could have somebody that you feel you could really have a heart to heart with. That'd be a really good thing to do.
I think you're right. I can tell you when we met in the bar.
That's what basically the bar was always. So shall I tell you also, I'm doing a licensed lay ministry course to be a lay minister in the chapel here in Cambridge, and I was doing the interviews for doing this all online because it was in the middle of COVID, and they said, oh, we think you should be a pioneer minister. I said, oh, the pioneer vicars I know have all been vicars who've set up churches in pubs. And they said, oh, well, we've talked to people at St. John's and you do spend a lot of time in the bar, so we were hoping that's where you could have your ministry. So maybe that fits in. So carry on, Gav. We were in the bar. So
we met in the bar, and we spoke about me being a falconer, and you gave me a book on avian medicine. That was the first.
So again, it's a question of there's always a link. What do they say? There's always 7 steps. But we found the step immediately because I'm fascinated in bird of prey, ophthalmology, and veterinary medicine, and then Gav had been a falconer or something. So and it's once you're a falconer, always a falconer. So amazing. If you can find a link with, and it'd be amazing, wouldn't it? What were you saying about one of the things in that ice bucket challenge was go and talk to somebody you've never talked to before. Just Have you been to someone? Just talk to someone in the street. I'm very bad in the middle at the front of St. John's. If there's somebody walking along, I'll just who looks up at the gate of St. John's. I'll grab them and say, "Oh, let me tell you something about St. John's, and whether they like it or not, I'll tell them." So
I think that's what I was going to say, is this thing of finding common ground, and we managed to do that quite quickly.
Yeah.
Some of you will be familiar with Joe Dilling. In fact, he is one of our podcast guests. He's the Stammer PT. He came to St. John's to our dinner last year and gave his first public speech. He struggled with the stammer all of his life, which is improving, was a massive step.
That was amazing. It has to be said. It was amazing to be there at that time, and we were all just amazed. Very so brilliant. Yeah.
Really well received. And so Joe's now, he was a medic in the army. He's left the army. You'll hear on his podcast, but he's currently running a challenge, which is a 7-day ice challenge with Joe. So I won't give too much away, but the first challenge is to get in a freezing cold shower for a while, which was not appreciated, Joe. So let's not do that again. And there are various challenges. And one of those is to go out and speak to someone that you don't know. And of course, I was thinking about this today. Quite easy. We were dining in college, and I was surrounded by people that I don't know. So managing to speak to someone about their background and experiences, having never met them, was quite easy. But I think we live in a society where it's quite difficult, actually, in terms of social conventions, to just walk up to someone you don't know and have a conversation with them. And I think that can be quite isolating. And I know we have on the group, there are young men who perhaps have relocated, or they might have left a job or moved areas and are feeling really disconnected. And the knock-on is always then low mood, depression, anxiety. Do you have any advice for if you find yourself in that situation? How do you reach out and find those meaningful connections?
Interestingly, if you look at the other people, if you just walk along the street and you find someone, there are very few people who walk along the street with a smile on their face. And maybe if they're people who are walking along the street with a smile on their face, they're people to avoid. But if you find someone just looking glum on the street, just if you go up to them and say, "Hi, I'd say I'm David. How's your day being?" Something, and maybe someone will go, "What?" and just walk away from you. But you'll be amazed the number of people who themselves are lonely and wanting someone to talk to. And if you did that with 3 people, I bet that you'd find one who was just delighted to have a chat with you. And so I'd say they're not going to do that. So if you could just have a go at doing that, and once you've done that once or twice, you'll find amazing people. I'm on the London Tube. I'm a really annoying person to sit next to you, because I'll say, "Hi, I'm David. You're reading that book. Can I just ask you what's fascinating you about it?" Now that may be an horrendous thing to do, but actually quite often, much more often than not, I've found that the person is reading that book maybe because there's nobody else to talk. There's nobody to talk to on the tube, and they're really interested to have that as a starter. So if you can just anybody, and that does something for you inside as well. If you can find somebody, and the people who go and clearly don't want to talk to you, that doesn't do much to bother me, because when I find someone who's interested to talk, you have the most amazing conversations. So I'd say have a go at that. Just conversing with people. And what's the worst thing they are? They're not gonna. They're on the London Underground. They're unlikely to bring a knife out and stab you, are they? So that's probably not an appropriate thing to say, and that can be. I can sure that can be edited out. But nobody's going to do that to you unless you're walking them on the street in South London, maybe. But if you just find someone and have a chat with them, most often they're really delighted to chat with you. So yeah.
I think there's the social convention thing, and there's the fear of rejection thing. But on the whole, I think most people, if you go up and speak to them, they're going to respond to you pretty positively. I know also if that's something you might struggle to do and you are feeling lonely, there's a thing called Andy's Man Club. That's a national thing, and they do weekly meetings, and you can arrange to go for that. And they get out in fresh air, go for a walk and a wander. And you might think, "Oh, that's not really for me," but if you don't try it, then you don't know. Yeah. So let's just rewind. So. I know you said at 6 you decided to be a vet. You took Jeanpierre, the guinea pig, to the vet, and were prescribed some toxic medication, and ultimately here you are now as the Director of Studies at Cambridge University College. But there have been some bumps in the road. What would you say to someone who's thinking about becoming a vet, but they perhaps don't have the family background, maybe no one in their family is going to university, they're not really sure how to pursue that aim. It might be quite difficult to study at home.
Yeah, I mean, certainly at the moment it's tricky, isn't it? But I'd say if you've got an animal and you've taken it to the vet, then go along to the vet and say, hey, thinking about veterinary medicine, either as a vet or a vet nurse or whatever, could I come and work with you? And I think it would be a harsh vet who had someone that did that to them, especially if you've already known them or already been interacting with the vet practice because of their having an animal there. Or if not, I mean, so I don't know how many people listen to this. 2, 3, 5. No, it is. But what I'd say is just find me, David Williams at Cambridge Vet School. My email is dlw33@cam.ac.uk. So dlw33@cam.ac.uk, and just give me a bell, or give me an email, and come and see a few days work. If you're keen on being a vet, do that, and we could have some fun together. Come around and see some animals with me, have a look around the vet school, and that can start you off. So I hope, how many thousand people listen to this? So hopefully not too many you want to do that. But honestly, I'd be only too delighted if you wanted to do that.
We're about 5,500 on the group.
Oh, no worries.
So you better check your email.
Yeah, exactly. I'll yeah, exactly. No, but honestly, I mean, I'm so excited by this as a profession. I'd be only too happy to. And maybe you say, oh, I'm not going to be clever enough to be a vet. Although interestingly, the 11th vet school has just started up in Preston. So actually, in the old days, like, I mean, I became a vet. I started as a vet student in '82, and then you had to get. Everybody wanted to be a vet, so you had to have a lot of you had to have like A levels at A grade or whatever. But and that's probably still the case for something like Cambridge. But there are lots of vet schools now keen to take people with a much more practical interest. Although it has to be said, Cambridge are really, lots of people think it's not practical, but it's a really practical vet school. Just in case I'm going to be slated then for people who are saying it's not. But no, what I'm saying. So what I'd say is, if you're keen to be a vet, just like Linda I was talking about earlier, who ended up being a vet nurse and then now is a professor, you can do it. So yeah, get in touch, and I'd be only too happy to help you, even if not by seeing you, but come and work with me. But if not, by helping you and giving you some contacts in wherever you are.
And is there a point that it's too late? What if, say, you've left school, you've gone off into a profession that you now find you're not too fulfilled by, you think you've missed the boat? Is that a thing?
What we're really keen on, actually, if you're 18 and you've always wanted to be a vet since the age of 6, then actually, do you really know what's involved? But actually, if you're 24 and you've never done a degree, but you're interested in, you've always been interested but never been able to, then there's certainly mature student places. We're here in Cambridge, there are 3 or 4 colleges that just do mature students. So we're very keen on having people who've thought it through and are really passionate about it at a later stage. And gosh, the thing is, you've got a life to live. So I'm 59 now. So and I started the vet course when I was in 1982. I wasn't 82. So, but if I had started in 1992, well, I'd still have had, I'd still be 40, I'd still have 30 years to be a vet. So what I'd say is, even at that, one of the best, sorry, I'm just burbling, aren't I? One of the best vets I know was a guy who really was a pioneer of equine reproduction. He did artificial insemination in horses when people thought that just wouldn't work. And Martin Boyle, his name is, and he had been an RAF pilot and then left the RAF aged 30, I suppose. And so he didn't become a vet until he was 40. But even at that point, he had enough years to be an absolute superstar of a new area in veterinary medicine, AI, in horses that had never been tried before. So there's a person who who didn't start the vet course till he was 33 or 34 or something like that, and still made. The thing is, these days, I'm pleased to say, 60 is the new 40, isn't it? I'm hoping, given that I'm 60 next year. So actually, yeah, there's all sorts of opportunities to do stuff. You just got to grab it. What did I say? The relay race, the baton. Someone's going to give you that baton, grab it and run with it.
And what academic profile are we looking at in terms of a mature student? Are we talking access courses or back to A-levels? Or?
So there's lots of there's bio-veterinary courses in several of the vet schools, and actually you have to talk to the people in the mature colleges. So Lucy Cavendish, Wolfson, Sedmans particularly, but they are really keen on getting people with experience in life. So if you're 18 and we're asking you to work, and also giving you the opportunities to do alcohol and rugby and ballroom dancing, then maybe you'll spend more time on the alcohol and the ballroom dancing than the veterinary medicine. I'm just realizing this is going out there, but actually, if you're 30 and you know maybe you're a family and you've got to focus, then actually I think you'd be brilliant to be a vet. So never say never.
And of course, there's scope outside of Cambridge as well. There are other universities that we're looking at.
Apparently, there are other universities. No. So I'm not. So certainly, I'm sure the Royal Veterinary College where I work as well is very happy to. I'm sure all veterinary schools are happy to take mature students, because actually we know that mature students are going to work. Whereas some of what's the opposite of mature? Immature? No. I didn't
direct entry.
Direct. No. So what? Yeah. So a young student will work brilliantly well, but actually there's nothing to stop a mature student coming in and doing really well.
And we spoke before about perhaps.
So, for instance, let me tell you. Can I give an example? Sophie was an amazing student. She had been a primary school teacher to start with. But also always passionate about horses. So she came in as a mature student. She was a wonderful student, and then she went and worked in equine work. She came back to the vet school and was a veterinary surgeon in equine in horses for the vet school, and now she works for a horse welfare charity, a general animal welfare charity, but particularly looking at horse welfare. And so she then sees what can she use from her primary school teaching stuff that she learned to actually encourage school kids to understand better about animal welfare. So there's a wonderful circle where she started off as a teacher, realized that because she didn't have the grades to be a vet student, went into teaching, realized actually after a few years that she really still wanted to be a vet, so left teaching, wanted to be a vet, and then realized now that actually she can join those two, teaching and vet, brilliantly together to be expert in equine welfare and teaching that to kids, everything from kids to people who've had horses for years. So I think I love using examples, and Sophie is a brilliant, wonderful example of exactly that. So anything, if you started off in something and you want to do something else, just grab the baton and run.
And that's that breadth of experience. I guess anything really can be made transferable. How important is the direct experience? You spoke before about speaking to a vet. I know when I was looking doing falconry, Neil Forbes, who I think you know, who's also a fellow of the Royal College and specialises in birds of prey.
Avian.
So I went and did a week working with him, and that was great fun. And you said before, it'd be a tough vet to say no. I think they do say no, but I think keep asking.
And if a vet says no, then basically, thank goodness they said no, because you don't want to work with them. So go and find a vet that says, "Oh wow, yes, I'd love to have you," and that's the vet you want to work with, sort of thing. So a vet that says, "Oh no, sorry, I've not got enough time," then thank goodness they said that, rather than saying, okay, come along, and then you wouldn't enjoy it. So yeah, so find a vet that says, yeah, go for it, and then go for it.
So what's the balance of your teaching and practice with animals, and is that your choice,
So
or have you
yeah,
weighed that?
so I wanted that it's all linked perfectly together. So for instance, today we went this morning. I had a horse that had a trauma a year or two ago, and we had like 5 students and 3 vets working with me at the vet school with this horse, and we looked at it and we sedated it and we examined it and we talked to the owner and got to where I think we should go with treatment wise. And so there's clinical work and teaching all the time there. And then then I had a dog with a really sore eye, but actually it's we have an RSPCA clinic at the vet school that does people that can't really afford veterinary fees. So we weren't going to operate on this dog, so we looked at giving it a particular anti-inflammatory drug that would solve its eye problem. And then so there were 3 students working with me with that. And then this afternoon we went out to see a horse that had been vetted, i.e. had been checked. Nice. I always think it's better to be a vet than a doctor. Wouldn't you prefer something that had been vetted rather than something that had been doctored? But anyway, that's another. So where are we? So we went to this horse had been vetted, and they found some little dots, some little cataract opacities in its lens. They wanted to know was this going to be a problem in the future. So again, we had like 5 students. We took the minibus out to 5 students and 2 or 3 vets and the owner and everyone else that was there on the livery yard. So we had about social distancing. At least the stable was sort of outdoors, so we had 15 or 16 people in there, and they all had a look at this horse's eye and saw what was the problem. So that's the lovely thing about teaching and clinical work, and being social all together, which is what I love about my job. So really
fantastic. So we heard about the tiger, and that's got you a nickname, I think.
Well, so when I came up, we have the fellows here at St John's have dinner every night, and the first night that went out on the BBC, I was called Tiger King. So it got called Tiger King by the fellows here at St John's. But and again, the key thing is if you can't have a laugh, if you can't appreciate people taking the mick of you, so back to school. So interestingly, in Cambridge, I was a Cambridge lad, and the first year of secondary school was the year that Cambridge went comprehensive, and all my friends went to the girls' grammar school in the middle of Cambridge, but we lived a lot closer to the secondary modern, and so which was like secondary modern in the days before like recent times was where the kids we had this exam called the 11 plus, which is what you took aged 11, amazingly, and that decided where you were going to go after the age of 11. So if you passed that exam, you went to the grammar school. If you didn't, you went to the secondary modern. So all my friends went to the grammar school that turned comprehensive, and my mum said, oh no, we're closer to the secondary modern, so they'll be more entertained by kids that want to learn. Well, there were 6 people in our year who wanted to learn. Mm-hmm. The rest really didn't. So ironically today I was looking with someone at a satellite, not a satellite, an aerial photo. There weren't satellites in those days. So an aerial photograph of Cambridge, and there was something called the Unicam factory, which made videos. Do you remember? Some of you won't know what a video. Well, you'll probably know what a video is in prehistory. So they made the first video players, and so all the kids in my school we would go to Unicam. So all so woodwork and particularly metalwork was hugely widely taught. So they had the same lathes as the Unicam factory did. So everyone went there, and they had never thought of people going to do further education sort of thing. So that was very interesting. I mean, the kids in my year were very happy because I would teach them, as it were, in lunchtimes how to do the homework sort of thing. But the kids in the years above were not happy with that at all. They knew they had been only taught to go to the pie factory, and here were kids who were clearly going to go further on than them. Actually, it's not true. If you were better than the pie factory, there was Cambridge Scientific Instruments, which you could go to. But apart from that, nobody went any further than Cambridge. And so there was a playing fields at the back of the school, and then a dip, which was like a muddy hollow at the back of the school. And you would be taken there at lunchtime and beaten up sort of thing. And I realised that if you made people laugh, they didn't hit you half as hard. And here's Gav now laughing. And I know if he laughs, he won't hit me particularly hard. So no. But honestly, that again made me who I was, because I realised that actually that was the way to get along sort of thing in a crazy sort of way. So I'll be open with you. My name is David Williams. I've never told anyone this before, but I was called Willy Wanker. And so of course I was so naive. I had no idea what that was. But if the kids in the years above wanted to call me that and not hit me so hard, I was happy with that sort of thing. And I went along thinking, so what could I have done in that situation? I could have been really unhappy that I was being beaten up and bullied and things like that. Or I could have gone, actually, if I can make them laugh, they hit me less hard, and it's only half an hour every lunch, probably only 2 or 3 lunchtimes a week, actually. And that, looking back at it, I can't believe now that seemed acceptable. But then this was 1975, I suppose. And it was just, so it was a very interesting school. So the first day of our that we were in the school, so I was age 12, I suppose. Our form tutor, Mr. Andrews, opened his drawer and picked out rather gingerly a piece of, it looked like plastic, sort of a slightly soiled plastic. And this was the first thing I came across in this school. And he dropped it in the bin. And then he said, next time, an unused one, please.
Lord.
Well, of course, I had no idea. I was a poor little 11, 12-year-old who had been brought up in a very nice family, even though it was only my mum and me. I had no idea what a condom was. And I then got to know Leslie Ellis, not know in that sense, so Leslie Ellis, who was the joker in the class, and of course everyone who knew what this was thought this was fun, and they thought it was even more fun. This poor little kid, David Williams, didn't know what a condom was. So actually, a life at Chesterton School was hilarious if you could cope with this sort of thing, and you learned either you're going to cope with it or not. And if actually the fact that you are stupid as far as life like that is concerned, not knowing what a condom was, actually the fact that I was clever as knowing what E equals MC squared was, you know what that? So some physics stuff. Then the people there could, in my year, coped with me because I was completely clueless on the things of life, but I knew everything that they needed to know for their homework. Then that's, in my year, what worked perfectly. And I sort of played up on the not knowing anything about like things of life like condoms. Although I really don't think that many people were nothing like the number of people that use condoms these days were using condoms in those days. And I'm not sure that Leslie Ellis had really, well, who knows? We won't go there anymore. But it was fascinating to live like that and to cope with that environment. And I think we're all these days in a similar situation, similar situation, in that you're dealing with whatever environment you're dealing with people that you're not like immediately able to link up with. So if you can make those links, then I never realized at the beginning of this conversation, Gav, that we'd be talking about Leslie Ellis and a used condom, but they were so he's got this way of, without just smiling, taking you on and into areas that you'd never thought of. So
I think you're right. I know my grandma and granddad had their first condom was a reusable condom that cost me a week's wages. And
Indeed,
then,
right.
That was washed and hung out, and the size changed and rendered it unusable after one use. But I think on an important point, kids can be quite cruel.
Yes. But again, the kids, that's interesting, isn't it? What an interesting word, cruel. So kids are cruel if you, this might be a bit of a rough thing to say, but if you let them be cruel. So I think if you actually go along with their cruelty, suddenly they realize, actually, this is no fun. If this kid actually is laughing along with you, then that's not being cruel, and what more can you do if he's enjoying the fact that he's going to go down and be duffed up, but actually give you a laugh at the end of the side? And of course, they were very clever kids. They never duffed you up enough that the teachers would see that you had been injured. So actually, to tell you the truth, it wasn't that bad, because
I think it's important probably to say that if you are at school listening to this and you are being bullied, then
indeed, I have to say, yes, of course, that was an awful long time ago, and things have changed. But well, you see, and my worry is that actually, I think, so we knew never to go to there were like 3 or 4 of us in the same situation. We knew never to go to the teacher, because in those days, going to the teacher would just make it worse. So I know you should go to the teacher these days, but actually, if you can sort it out by getting to know those kids, actually, to tell you the truth, Dale Renouf and Leslie Ellis, actually, they were lovely kids themselves. And actually, so I know Dale's in prison for a long time now, but actually, you could get to know, if you get to know these kids, your kids, and not maybe have them even as friends, but try and get to know them, then that seemed to work. And I want difficult to say this now, but and especially if you're in this situation of being and the trouble is, in those days it was very easy. Kids would duff you up, and then that was it. Whereas these days in social media, it's so much more difficult now. You're not in that. If you're face to face with someone, I could make those kids laugh, and then they didn't be. You can't do that on social. Social media is so much more difficult because you can't have that easy interaction with them. So I think from that perspective, it's much more difficult. If someone's doing something physically to you at school, then actually you can talk to them and actually get round it. But actually, it's much more difficult on social media, I'm sure, to be in that situation. So so very different that what I'm saying in prehistory of school from now. So don't feel, and again, it's all how you take it, isn't it? So don't think, oh well, he's just making light of it. I'm not, because I realise how, and I suppose it's just because it's so easy to look back in the past and think, oh well, I got through that. So whether it was being made redundant by the place I was thinking I was going to work in, for the research hospital I was going to work in forever, making me redundant, that was bad, or being beaten up by Dale. No, he never beat me. It was the people in the year above that beat me up, not none of the people in the year my year. Anyway, but all that stuff, it's very easy to look back on and think, oh well, it's fine because I got through it, and much more difficult to remember it at the time, because I can't remember what it was like on the day, sort of thing. Because when in time everything seems to be rosier when you look back on it. So
I think it can fade. And I would say if you are being bullied, then obviously speak to your parents. If you can't speak to your parents, speak to a teacher. And if you can't speak to a teacher, then if you're on the Lads Advice group, you can speak in confidence to any member of the team, and we will offer some support and guidance and some signposting there.
And also, the one person we haven't said to talk to is one of your peers. If you can find someone of your group, sort of thing, that actually it's maybe it's much more difficult to talk to them about an interaction you're having with somebody in that group. But if you can, I think it's maybe more valuable to you than going to a teacher or a parent, because they can give you some support. But then, yeah, I think if you can talk to somebody of your own in your own group, that can be really, really valuable.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the point is you needn't be alone, and whoever
Yeah.
it is you reach out to, make sure that you reach out to someone. I wanted to rewind a little bit. We spoke earlier about some of your practice in terms of RSPCA work and working with animals that might belong to people who, for whatever reason, are struggling financially. If you've got a pet and you are having difficulties financially, and that pet has a medical problem, urgent or otherwise, do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, so one of my big problems in veterinary medicine these days is that because now practices are large and they've got lots of people working for them, and they're very flash, and they've got, there's lots of chrome and steel and stuff like that around, and glass. Then just to make ends meet, that practice has to charge a lot of money. And actually, that's not why I became a vet, to earn lots of money. So the RSPCA is available, sort of thing, wherever you are. If you've got an animal that's got a problem. And the other trouble is, I think lots of these practices that have very high standards feel that, to say do an operation on a dog, you first of all have to put a catheter in its leg and maybe do some what we call pre-op bloods, which means to check up that it's all okay beforehand. And then so I go to practices that are like that, and then there are other practices that say, look, this animal needs this operation done. We don't need to know exactly how brilliantly well it is. Let's just do it. Inject the anaesthetic off the needle. Do the operation as clean an environment as you can, but not ultra sterile like you would do in a hospital operating theatre. And then they can do it at much lower costs. So there are always options around. Don't shop around, and also then obviously ask the RSPCA or the PDSA. There'll be someone in your area that can really help you. And we realize there are lots of people who have pets and then say unemployed or whatever, and can't cope financially, and so there's always opportunities for that.
The Blue Cross, is that the PDSA?
Yeah, Blue Cross again. Yeah, lots of So Blue Cross, PDSA, RSPCA. Yeah, and then there are other ones, like in London there's the Ralph, which is another charity. If you go to your vet and you say, I can't afford this, then vets are pretty wary of saying, oh, we can put you on we can charge this over time, because legally actually that puts them in the same sort of area as a bank or a building society that are lending you money. So lots of vets can't do that. And so the easiest thing to do would be to say, look, you can't afford it now, pay a deposit and then pay it back over time. So one of the things is there are lots of people who then disappear, and so practices can't do that. But also, if you do that from a legal financial perspective, that puts you in a difficult position. So lots of vets can't do that. But if you say, I can't afford this, can you find funding? Then, for instance, at the vet school, the RSPCA will underwrite operations that we do, and similarly you'll find vet practices that can do that, or can point you in the direction of the PDSA or the Blue Cross or something similar.
It's always worth asking the question. There is support out there, I guess, is the message.
Always support, exactly. Yes.
So we spoke about the tiger.
Yeah.
Is that the most exotic animal you've had dealings with?
I mean, we do. When I was in London, I did a fair bit of work with London Zoo, and I still do some work with them. And so I've dealt with an elephant with a corneal ulcer there. Well, actually, interestingly, at the moment I've got a student looking at penguin poo and the bacteria in penguin poo. So we're going to pop up to London and see what bacteria are in there. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy. But actually, to tell you the truth, even the little Lhasa Apso or the Yorkie or something like that someone's pride and joy, that's as interesting to me as the most weird and wonderful. I tell you, I knew a crazy lady. She's sadly now died, but she qualified as a vet in 1937, and I knew her in 1987, I suppose, and beyond that. And she ended up in 1937, vets did anything. So she ended up doing fish and birds, and so she was the vet. There were, none of you will remember this, but PG Tips tea bags did an advert, which would never be allowed these days, which had chimpanzees having all dressed in as people having tea.
Real ones.
I mean, outrageous. So the PG Tips chimps, once they got old and weren't able to do adverts anymore, went into a zoo, which is now Twycross Zoo, and Mary did the work for the two crazy ladies, almost as crazy as Mary, who started up that zoo. And it's now a huge zoo, really important in primate conservation and welfare. Anyway, so Mary had some halibut fish in an experimental halibut farm in the north of Scotland, and these halibut were all going blind. And so we went up, we stayed at the Loch Shiel Hotel on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula in the west coast of Scotland, and they had a long bar with one shelf with 115 malt whiskies on it, including the Glenlivet we've got having tonight. And it's amazing how things come around in circles. And so it took Mary and I 15 years to work out why these halibut were going blind. And in the time, we had worked through the whole shelf of the malt whiskies. So, and it turned out these halibut were normally lived at like 300 meters depth. And at that depth, they produced oxygen in the back of their eye to fuel their retina in seeing other fish to eat them. But at that depth, there was enough pressure of water to keep all the oxygen in solution without bubbling out. But when you kept them in a tank that was only like a meter or two deep, all the oxygen came out of solution and stopped dissolving, a bit like the bends. These halibut were having the bends in their eyes, and it took us ages to work that out, and ages, lots of malt whiskey to work that out. So eventually after 15 years, we managed to work out what was going on, and these fish were being fed in one big lump, as it were, of feed, and they were all fighting with each other. And a bit like if any of you do diving, you'll know if you start having any thought of having the bends, you lie down for an hour or two, and then the bubbles dissolve back into your blood. And the same thing happened with these fish. If you kept them, if you put the feed all the way round the huge tank they were in, these fish then didn't interact and have aggressive interactions with each other. But then, and so in a very easy way, after 15 years and a lot of malt whiskey, we managed to work out how to stop these fish going blind. So I mean, there are innumerable crazy stories like that that are there if you ask too much. So don't ask anymore.
Have you ever found yourself in a dangerous or risky situation in your job?
Yeah, mostly with people. I won't say where it was, but this guy was a heavyweight boxing champion, and he she was his daughter's dog. And I said, I'm really not happy with how his daughter was extremely large, it has to be said, so you shouldn't have. And then I said, I'm really not happy with how you're keeping your dog. I think we need to maybe talk to the RSPCA about getting you some support in. And then he crouched down through the door and came into the room and said, are you telling me that my dog isn't keeping her dog right? So I said, no. So it's the people that are far more frightening than the animals.
A bit more philosophical.
Yes.
Eyes. The window to the soul.
Ah, indeed.
What
so
do your eyes?
So interestingly, when I started at the back of the vet school in 2000, they always asked you for a question for the final year exam. And I put this question: the eye is the window to the soul. It said, how is the eye the window to internal disease in the dog and cat? And nobody ever put that in as a question. And suddenly I had a friend who was the external examiner who said, oh, what an excellent question. So imagine these poor students opening the paper and finding this question there. So back to what was your question. The eye is the window to the soul.
You're quite a spiritual man, and you.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yes. I thought it was I suppose. So when I was, remember, my mum and dad weren't married, so my mum thought that she had no ethical input that she could give to me, knowing that she had, as we would say in those days, produced a son out of wedlock. Ooh, can't remember that. So she took me to the local church. Well, not the local church. A church a bit further away. I'm not sure why she took me to the Round Church in Cambridge. But they went to the Sunday school there, and I became a Christian through the youth group there, and the first youth camp I went on there, and so it carried on from there, really, realizing that there is a God out there who's keen on knowing us and loving us, and even whatever we do.
Top 3 pets, including best dog breed if you're going to have a dog.
So the best dog breed is a mongrel that you managed to find in a local rehoming charity. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Well, because actually a good rehoming charity would have actually done their background work, working out this dog is the best for you. And to tell you the truth, they will come and do a house check to check that actually you're the best person for the dog. Do that. Get a cockapoo or something. Poo a cock. No, sorry, I shouldn't say that. And that's 8 weeks old. That's just come from its mum, and who knows whether that's. And so I would say, finding a dog that actually needs a home, and a mongrel mutt that's not got any. Every pedigree dog has been really, really inbred and will have loads of problems. Well, even maybe just one problem because of its inbredness. Something. So maybe it's got pancreatitis. It's likely to get pancreatitis, or maybe it'll have hip dysplasia and won't walk properly, or maybe it's got a cataract. Whatever. So, but a good old mutt will be fine, and the rehoming charity will work really hard to find the one that you want. So that's my top breed.
And less likely to have veterinary problems as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as a vet, we wanted to have as many problems as possible so we can get money from your wallet into ours. Did I say that? No, that's a joke. So when the kids come here, when the students come here for their first day, I tell them half of what I tell you is true. 10% I probably got wrong at the beginning. 10% I've improved, and I haven't kept up with what's going on in veterinary medicine. And the other 30% is a joke. But I say to them, you're Cambridge students. It's up to you to work out what's a joke and what isn't. Because what I just told you might be a joke or might not be. And you can imagine these poor students are going, what? And we've got to cope with this guy for 6 years. Soon they realise that most of what I say is a joke. So actually, it's likely that 50% is a joke, and it's to be. So back to what
so
the hell
top 3 pets. We got a mongrel. 2 more.
I love Labradors. I think they're fantastic. We've bred Labradors to be good running and working dogs, and to be fantastic with people. So I think they're fantastic dogs.
Okay, 3rd one. Can't be a dog, can't be a guinea pig.
Oh, sorry. We're now talking about different. So I love something like an iguana.
Yeah.
Is great because if you can keep it in the environment that it's used to, and that doesn't mean you have to go and keep it in some jungle, but if you can work out what's best for it as far as temperature and humidity and its environment's concerned,
yep,
and its food, then you can do brilliantly for it. And actually, it doesn't need huge amounts of social interaction. And one of the problems I think with lots of the animals that we have, I haven't talked about cats, I should talk about cats as well, but one of the problems we have lots of dogs is dogs are pack animals, and you are the leader of the pack. And that means if you're out for 8 hours of the day, it's just going, where's the leader? So I would say, unless you're going to be around, so I've done some wonderful work with homeless people in Cambridge and London, and actually they have the best dogs because they have dogs that are with them all the time. And these homeless people, actually, if you give them money, they're likely to spend it on their dog before. That's one of the problems. They're likely to spend it on the dog more than them, but that's wonderful. But that goes back to saying dogs really need people. And if you're the sort of person who's out at work even 6 hours a day, that's really hard on your dog, unless you have 2 or 3 dogs together. Which should be fine. But then that's a huge problem. Just vet fees and feeding and all those, the financial perspective there is difficult. Cats are great because a cat, what did we say? Dogs have owners, cats have staff. So the cat, just as long as you feed it, it couldn't care a shit, basically. So do I mean that? So I think cats can be good, and cats can love you as well. But or an iguana. So
if you got a pet and you can afford it, do you recommend insurance?
Well, here's a different one. So if your dog has nothing wrong with it until it's 12, then all that insurance money was not good news. Because at 12 they'll say, "Oh, sorry, we'll only pay half of your half of the fees because it's now old." And we know don't kill me for saying this, but what's the bottom line for a pet insurance company? Your animal's welfare? Your welfare? No. It's the bottom line is its bottom line. So they want to make money out of you, as I suppose to all insurance companies. So the other thing to do is take whatever that money is that you'd pay monthly, 20 quid a month, and put it in a pot or a bank account for your pet. And at the end of 5 years, or the end of whatever, when there's a reasonable amount of money in it, and you can go out for dinner on your pet, So no, I've been to South Korea where they have pets for supper, but we won't go there. So if you can, then I maybe that. Of course, if your dog gets run over in the first month, then you're stuffed basically. But so I'm all vets. I mean, if you listen to dear Noel Fitzpatrick, dear Mr. Super Vet, he will tell you that Pet Plan is the best. He'll tell you that. I'm not sure. I thought as vets we weren't allowed to particularly promote one, but he does it online on the adverts. I've seen the adverts. I turn off immediately. But so obviously he's wanting people to be insured so that he can charge from the earth.
So I guess you need to weigh up, if there were to be a crisis, could you afford it? And if you could, then maybe you just put the money in a pot. I wanted to show you this. We're coming close to the end, I guess, now of the podcast. But I want to show you this is Damien. He's one of the Queen's guards.
Oh, right.
And when I mentioned that we were having you on, he sent me, or us, on the group, a selection of his pets.
Oh, right.
You won't be able to see this on the podcast, but you might be able to tell us what they are. He's got a real menagerie going on here.
Oh, yeah. So snakes? Yeah, great. A scorpion, so Heterometra spinifer, scorpion. So that's actually a scorpion that's really large, an Indonesian scorpion, and not particularly poisonous. So yeah, and a great, again, as a founder member of the Veterinary Invertebrate Society, I should have said, invertebrates can be great because again, you can't do much wrong with a scorpion as long as you feed it and keep it in the right environment. So that, and if you've got a fairly small flat, you could keep it in something that's like 10 inches, or would you say 30 centimeters by 15 centimeters, and it can be fine. So I mean, you can't take it out for a walk, but it'll listen to you. It does have weird book lungs. But anyway, whatever.
So it may not be poisonous, but that looks like a pretty big stinger. Are they aggressive?
Yeah. Well, again, with everything, if you had a dog and you put your hand in its mouth, you might expect it to bite you. But I mean, what is it, about 10 centimeters long? And you can impress your friends without the nice thing is, if you had a Rottweiler to impress your friends, you would have to do a lot of work to keep that dog happy. You don't have to do much work to keep a scorpion happy.
And these things carry their babies around on their back, right?
Oh, yeah, lovely. Yes, lovely little white babies.
And this...
It's a tarantula.
Big spider-looking thing.
Yes, it's a, yes. Does it? Oh, right. Is that a lizardy thing? I can't, oh, yes.
Sort of gecko,
yes.
is it?
Gecko, it could be a gecko, yeah. Again, they're nice because they're little, but again, you have to, so now we're not allowed to call them exotic. We have to call them non-traditional companion animals. Yeah, I know. Gavin has just died, by the way. Yeah. So
what's going on here?
I've no idea. Show me again. What? I have no.
It's like a rather large snake's mouth.
Oh, so he's
pretty hungry to me.
Yeah. So the other problem is that if you have a snake that you have to keep that snake in the right environment, the right temperature. You have to give it enough of an enclosure that it can actually find its own preferred temperature. So I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I would say that it's. Unless you're really good at keeping things like snakes. So if you went into Pets at Home, great store generally, but actually you can get a snake there, a little snake, for not very much, but you really need to know your snake. So you can, if you worked on it and you read up the stuff about it beforehand, that might work. But I generally don't like keeping animals that we haven't bred, pardon me, for years to be interactive. We know dogs. We've bred them for 11,000 years since we got them as a wolf cub from the side of our campfire. You know, when we were primitive people. Actually, there are primitive people still around. Well, we won't go there. So when prehistoric, those animals have then lived with us for years. There are problems about that as well, but these guys, an invertebrate, a spider or a scorpion, you can't go much wrong with that. You can make snakes really quite unhappy, I think, and then it can be quite difficult to cope with it. If you work on it, if you interact with other people in your locality or in a reptile club or something like that can be really good. But I'm a bit concerned about keeping those if that's your first pet to keep.
You need to know your stuff.
Yeah,
this looks like there's a spider in quite a cool enclosure. It's coming out to eat some sort of
mealworm thing. Yeah. So again, a spider in the wild doesn't roam around a lot. You get the right one, but lives, as you say, in a burrow and just comes out. So can be fine. But
here we've got, it's quite a large snake. By the looks of it.
Oh yeah. So some of these sugar gliders.
Is that what that
again,
is?
I'm a little bit worried. So sugar glider lives in the wild, and we don't really know much about how it's best kept in captivity, to my mind. But
I think there's some Facebook groups and sort of online communities of people that share information.
Oh, there are. Without that.
And then finally, tortoise.
Yeah, what is that tortoise? Sorry, no. Yeah, I mean, they can be fine. Again, and what you have to realise is a tortoise will live longer than you will. Mm-hmm. So if you bought a 1-year-old tortoise, it would easily outlive you. If you bought it probably when you were 5, kept well, it would outlive you. The trouble is that, of course, those tortoises live in Greece or Turkey. If you're dealing with something like Testudo greci, the Greek Berthaid tortoise, and so its environment and the fact that it hibernates for maybe a month when it's cool in Greece, and then but here we hibernate it for ages, and there are lots of problems with tortoises in this country unless you're really careful with them. So I mean, I had a tortoise, Dandy, because he ate dandelions when I was again 7 or 8 sort of thing, and Dandy lived for years and years and years. I don't know, he managed to, and then suddenly just died one year, and probably it was a bit of a a longer winter, and so there can be problems with all these sort of animals. But
and there's complexities as well. I think I know my mum, when she was a girl, Blue Peter used to have a tortoise, and it used to be a thing where they'd put it down to hibernate.
Indeed, exactly. I
But you
remember
shouldn't
that.
do
Yes.
that unless they're a certain
Well,
weight.
well,
and
yeah,
so on
but
and so
yes,
forth.
but again, yes, you can make it all too complicated as well. So, and again, if you've got something like a tortoise, get involved with the British Chelonia group, which will have a local group that you can go and chat to people. So yeah. There's all those options. And I think that's one of the fun things of having any animal is getting to know your animal. And if it's a dog or a cat, it's getting to know it as an individual with an individual relationship. If it's a tortoise, well, it's probably getting to know it more in what its native environment is and what its needs are, and then fulfilling those.
So there's a couple of questions on here from the group.
Go for it.
One of them's from a Cambridge student, actually, by the looks of it.
Hello, Cambridge student.
And the other one is from someone I know has an awful lot of pets of all kinds. So the first one, the gist of this seems to be, are there animals that are predisposed to being domesticated and animals that are not? And this is sort of talking here about tigers and bears and photographs that you see and videos of people interacting with these animals they've had from a youngster and how
wolves definitely 10,000 years ago. Okay, so 10,000 years ago we got wolves and we turned them into dogs, or they turned themselves into dogs. Have you read Tamed by I can't remember her name now. I've given it to a student. So Tamed is a brilliant book about animals and plants and even humans that have been tamed by that interaction with a human. And so again, so the trouble is, all of these animals, so cats and dogs have been tamed in the past and interact with humans now. So I think, exactly. 10 Species That Changed the World, Alice Roberts. Yeah, well worth reading. Fantastic book. So what was the question? So are there animals that are particularly
predisposed to being domesticated, and others that really it's a bit of a trick when you see online these videos of people with bears and tigers?
I think honestly the fact that the wolf was able to be tamed, as Alice Roberts will tell you in her book, is that it was a pack animal, so it was very easily able. So a tiger, really, you see this stuff of tourists going and lying with these tigers in the Bangkok Tiger Temple sort of thing. I've been there. Now those animals seem to be really content. And when I asked the Buddhist monks why the animals were so relaxed, they said because they are reincarnated Buddhist monks. That's another thing entirely. So I really feel that unless they're little animals, so something like that scorpion or whatever, that has such minor welfare needs, as long as you fulfill its environmental needs, it probably is fine. So, have you come across sea monkeys?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, lovely. If you've got a child, how lovely. See, you can't go wrong with sea monkeys, basically.
Them,
Can you not? Although, on our kitchen wall, we have a lovely picture by Sam when he was like 3 and now he's 26, of him and his sea monkeys, and he loved them. And I mean, sorry. God, it's amazing how we can get onto craziness, isn't it? So I'm not suggesting that sea monkeys are our ideal pets, but just to say, the lower you go down the evolutionary tree, if we believe in an evolutionary tree, so the fewer emotional needs skink or scorpion has, but probably the more environmental needs it has to make sure that it's fine, whereas a dog has or a cat has just the same environmental needs as we have. So there's a crazy spectrum from that perspective.
Final question is one from Damien. Why do snakes have no eyelids?
Oh, so it's said that I love it. Oh, now have we only? It is now 11:15, so we've only got 3/4 of an hour till 12. So probably snakes evolved to burrow underground, and that's why their eyelids fused over the top to make a transparent spectacle. So that's they do have eyelids, but actually they've been fused into a transparent spectacle. That's why also they have no legs, although of course if you look at pythons and boas and you do an x-ray of their back, you see little tiny spurs that were where their hind legs were. So all of that probably links in with the fact that they've got these spectacles to protect their eyes as they burrow underground. And then they came up to the surface again and went, oh flip, I don't know how to make new eyelids, so we'll just keep our spectacles. Well, the spectacle can give lots of problems that I deal with. We had a snake a couple of weeks ago where snakes will shed their skins all the time, and so this snake had retained its spectacle, so quite difficult to check to try and get that off without damaging the underneath. So, but we did. That's another story entirely, isn't it? As you said, the last question. I don't want the last question an hour and a half questions answer. So
they come with some unique problems as a result.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. But fascinating for that perspective. So amazing animals.
I don't usually ask this, but I know you like to talk as I do. Any final words?
Enjoy.
Fantastic. Dr. David Williams, thank you very much for joining us, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
I've enjoyed it so much as well. Thanks, Gav.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Got Your Six Lads Advice Encounters with me, Gav Topley, and Cambridge University vet Dr. David Williams. If you'd like to keep up with Dr. Williams on Instagram, you can follow him, bow_Tye, BOW_TEYE. As always, you can get involved with the Lads Advice group on Facebook. You can also message us on Instagram, lads_advice, on Twitter, advice_lads, or you can email us at ladsadvice@hotmail.com. If you'd like to support our fundraising with a £20,000 target, Virus Prevention of Young Suicide, you can do so at www.justgiving.com/fundraising/Chaz and Gav/Killy. If you'd like to support the upkeep of the show and of the Facebook group, you can do so on Patreon at www.patreon.com/GavTopley. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.